Good afternoon, everybody. It's so exciting to be here and to go back into that magical place called Snorkel and Study. And we're going to do a little bit of learning today. And for the second part of this, you'll need a handout. So I'm going to give you a few here. I'll give these to you and you can hand them out to people as they come. All right, so I'm going to begin with a story, true story about a shliach, one of the rebbe's emissaries in California. And anybody who runs a small business and answers their own phones or has one secretary who's fielding the calls, but then you have to field the calls if she's in the bathroom or her kid has a snow day or whatever. So this shliach is just like that, but I guess in California it's not snow days, it's whatever. And he's busy, he's running around, and he picks up the phone, and there's like this guy speaking in a very heavy British accent, and he wants to speak to the owner of the business. So he quickly figures out this is a telemarketer. He says the owner's not there, he hangs up. Long story short, this guy calls back 8 times. The 8th time, the shliach says to himself, I should give this guy at least a minute to tell me what he's calling about. Turns out he's calling about toner for the copy machine. So he's like, he's running, he's late. He's like, send me a proposal, and he hangs up the phone. Well, sure enough, this guy researches his email address, sends him a very detailed proposal. And then he starts calling again and again and again. And finally, the shliach says, I have to read this proposal so I can rebuff this guy, legitimately. So he reads the proposal and he sees that he would be charging a lot more than he's currently paying. So the next time he calls, he says to him, I'm sorry, you've been very persistent, but I can't give you the business because I'm running a nickel and dime operation here. Every penny is accounted for. It's charity money. I cannot spend more than I'm spending right now on toner. Well, within a few hours, he has a new proposal in his email, in his inbox. And then when this guy calls, he says, you gave me a good price. I can actually do business with you. But I'm thinking that it's now about over 30 times that you've called me. And there really must be a much more important reason than toner. I could get toner anywhere. So the guy says, well, what kind of small business do you run? He says, well, I'm in the business of helping Jews connect or reconnect with their Jewish heritage. He says, that's funny. I'm Jewish. So the shliach says, oh, well, that's probably why you had to call me all these times. He says, no. I don't want to get any ideas in your head. I'm married to he's not married. I have a non-Jewish girlfriend. She's 8 months pregnant. We're getting very serious. And and I don't think I'm the guy you're looking for. But if you want the toner, so the guy says, no, you're precisely, the shliach says, you're precisely the Jew I'm looking for. Tell me, do you have a pair of tefillin? Do you know what tefillin are? Guy says, I don't know what you're talking about. So he explains to him that there's a very special mitzvah for Jewish men to do. He says, like a guy like me? So the shliach says, yeah, a guy like you. He says, so the shliach says, where are you located? I'll send one of my colleagues. Turns out he's calling from Manila in the Philippines. So the shliach says, well, let me find out if I could have a colleague get to you. So this is in the summer where there are yeshiva students acting as roving rabbis, and he's hoping that he could find somebody who will just hop over to Manila to give this guy a pair of tefillin and teach him how to use them. Well, he locates these roving rabbis, make a day, and then he decides, you know what? He's going to give this guy a proper bar mitzvah. So he says, we're going to do this over Skype. These rabbis are going to come. They're going to show you how to put on tefillin. It's going to be your bar mitzvah. And now the guy gets nervous. He says, bar mitzvah? No. I'm not the type. I'm not the type. My mother is a Holocaust survivor, and she hasn't done anything religious since the Holocaust. Forget it. We're calling this off. Bar mitzvah sounds too serious. So the shliach says, you know what? Ask your mother if you should do it. And ask your girlfriend, see what she says. Well, the mother said it was a very fine idea, and the girlfriend thought this was going to be very fascinating. So the bar mitzvah was called back on, and the shliach had all of his children get into Shabbos dress, and they made a party in California, and he had the roving rabbis bring some treats, some kosher treats, and put a white tablecloth on the table and light candles. And this Jew put on bar mitzvah for the first time in his life, and it was his bar mitzvah. I don't know what the end of the story is. It's not like I can stand here and tell you that this guy dropped the girlfriend he was getting serious with, and so on and so forth, or that she became Jewish. I can't tell you that. But the reason I lead with the story is because I can tell you that we are living in incredibly, incredibly important times. And it's hard, I think, for us to appreciate the enormity of what our Rebbe has put into place. The fact that a shliach, when called about toner, would say to himself, this guy is so persistent, he's making me so meshugah, it must be that I have to find out if he needs tefillin. The fact that some of you have brothers, or some of you have had brothers who've been stopped. On national TV, they had one of the comedians, she was making fun of the fact that her son had a bar mitzvah in a mall. She didn't know about it, and nobody brought presents, and she wasn't even invited. And it was her son was stopped in a mall to put on tefillin, and some bachrim, some young Lubavitcher kids gave what? Okay, thank you for filling in for me. So I didn't remember her name, but I remember that a lot of people sent me links to this. But this is what's going on. A drive-by bar mitzvah. A drive-by bar mitzvah. So where does this come from? Where does this appear from? It doesn't come in a vacuum. And I'd like to just take you back a little bit and then go further into the future. So actually, when the Rebbe became Rebbe, in his very, very first Hasidic discourse with which he accepted the mantle of leadership formally, he actually laid out his vision. And he said that our task was to make this world, or to uncover and to reveal the beauty of this world, how it is an outstandingly beautiful garden for its creator, God. Now, this did not happen in a vacuum either. The Rebbe is part of a golden chain starting with the Baal Shem Tov. Who was the Baal Shem Tov? We know that he was the initiator of the Hasidic movement. We also know that for the beginning of his life, nobody recognized his greatness. He spent a lot of his time taking little children to cheder, to school, but slowly, his fame grew, his teachings were promulgated far and wide. And the Baal Shem Tov told us that at some point during his life, he actually had an experience where his soul was divested from his body, his soul went up to heaven, and in heaven, he met Mashiach, and he asked Mashiach, hey, when are you coming already? And Mashiach said, momentarily, as soon as your teachings are spread wide. Okay? As soon as the well springs of your teaching are spread wide, I will be there. So the question now becomes, ad masai, how long do we have to wait for this to happen? So beyond the love of Hashem and the love for every other Jew, the Baal Shem Tov taught a radical notion. He taught, it's so central and axiomatic to Jewish theology that we take for granted this was something that Jews always knew. But this was a novel teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, that the entire world is godliness. That everything you look at, the multiplicity, the plurality, the multifariousness, the tablecloths and the floor and this video machine and the white chairs and everything, it's all manifestations of God. He taught about the Yichud Hashem, that there's only the unity of God. Ein od milvado, there's nothing else. And it's something that we've been trying to assimilate over the last 200 plus years. And for some of us, it comes easier. For some of us, it's more of a struggle. And I sometimes think, talking about snorkel and study, that when we sit around and we talk about, is there a God, and how to understand God, and we ruminate and we postulate, we're like two fish in the water that you might overhear when you go snorkeling. And you're snorkeling and you hear two fish speaking to each other. And one says to the other, "Hey, do you believe in water?" And the other fish says, "It's so funny that you should ask, because lately I've been thinking about that, because I know I've been told that my grandfather used to believe in water. My parents, not so much. They kind of veered away from that notion. But I'm starting to think that there really is such a thing as water." And you're snorkeling away and you're thinking, "Wow, what is that fish smoking? Because it's good." Like, they're snorkeling in the water and they're having a discussion about if water exists. And by the way, that's us. For me to walk from this chair through those doors that I came in from, I have to literally swim through godliness. I have to swim through Elokut. And yet, I'm able to have moments where I might have a thought about, was this really God's plan? Is this the way it's supposed to be? We're all able to talk about if there is a God, as if that's even a possibility. But that, of course, was the divine plan. Why do we feel this way? Well, some of us might say cynicism, sadness, there's a lot of evil, there's a lot of pain. But all of that is really just the manifestation of Hashem's will to cloud, to shroud, to obscure, to obfuscate godliness so that we would have the privilege of finding it on our own. We would have the privilege of embracing God. We would have the privilege of having a relationship. And a relationship is not something that's foisted upon you. It's something that you choose. So here we are living in a world we call olam, right? And that word has as its etymon he'elem, which means to shroud or obscure. We live in a world that skillfully masks its creator. And so it is that we swim our way through godliness, asking if there is a God. Okay? Now, when will this go away? When will it be clear to us that there is a God, that everything is godliness? Only when Mashiach comes. The Rambam describes it in the following way. He says, "Umala ha'aretz deas Hashem kamayim layom mechasim." The knowledge of God will cover the earth like waters cover the seabed. That's all there'll be. There'll just be God consciousness. So just like when you look at the ocean, all you can see is water. Water. That's all you see. That's what we will feel when Mashiach comes. But how do we get there? How do we get billions of egos to work towards one goal, to come to that place? So you know this, you've been at Beis Chana. Our job is simply to do mitzvahs. And we've been doing this for thousands of years. Each mitzvah uncovers the supernal will. It unleashes a light. It breaks the hold of the klipa in this world. The Baal Shem Tov was the first Jew who got this view of the Mashiach, of the Messianic era, and it was clear in his mind. And he was able to visualize it so that the Jews who lived during that time were able to feel it in their souls. But it wasn't actually until the Baal HaTanya, the first Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, actually created a system known as Chabad philosophy. And at that point, Jews were able to take this notion that had been in their soul and actually conceptualize it. They were able to grasp it with their cognitive faculties. Then, after the Baal HaTanya, with every successive Chabad Rebbe, the ideas became more and more tangible. So if you look at the Chassidus that was taught by each Rebbe successively, it's brought down so that this idea of Achdus Hashem, the unity of God, our ability to tap into that unity and to create that unity, it all becomes clearer and clearer in their writings. Then the Rebbe takes over. And now things become completely different. The Rebbe makes an astounding statement in that opening discourse that he delivers. He says, we have brought the Eibishter, we have brought God down through the heavens Now we simply have to bring God into this world. And he introduces the theme that would be most salient throughout his lifetime, throughout his teachings, and throughout his influence, which just keeps getting stronger and stronger. And this is the notion of dira b'tachtonim, to create a dwelling place for God in this lowly existence in this world. And this, he says, is the final frontier. He says, we're the seventh generation. He and his flock are going to burst through the last coverings, and we're going to bring God down, mishamayim mimal vala aretz mitachas, from the heavenly supernal realms down into this lowly world. The Rebbe made God real. And I want to just very quickly give you 3 examples. Okay? The first is the notion of a Chabad house. What's a Chabad house? Who ever heard of such a thing? What's a Chabad house? Like a steakhouse where you go to eat steak? What's a Chabad house? We take it for granted. Now there's I don't know how many thousands all around the world. But what is a Chabad house? So it seems to me that what a Chabad house is an embassy. Just like if you are an American citizen, you could be in any corner of the world, but if you run onto the property of the embassy, you are safe. You are in America. That's what the Rebbe wanted. In every corner of this world, there should be an embassy. There doesn't have to be a reason that a person comes there. There doesn't have to be a specific agenda. But if they come, and when they come, whether they're running, whether they're walking, whether they come of their own volition, or whether they come because they're somehow forced into it by various factors. And I could think of certain people that have walked over our threshold, seriously forced by very dramatic factors. And later they told us how it was clear to them that in their lifetime they would never walk into Chabad Center. But that's the nature of an embassy. The doors are open, the ground is sacred, and you don't have to show anything but the fact that you are a citizen of that country. All you have to be is Jewish. This notion that there's no membership, there's absolutely nothing you have to be or do. You just have to be who you are. But the Rebbe was not satisfied with just embassies. The next example I just want to give you is this idea of miftzaim. Miftzaim, the Hebrew word mifza actually means a campaign, or in Israel, mostly means a sale. All right? But the Rebbe's miftzaim were not about a sale of physical goods. It was this. For those Jews who are not going to come to the embassy, we're going to send the embassy to them. So the Rebbe dispatched young and old Hasidim to literally do something bizarre beyond bizarre. Sorry, I hope that doesn't sound heretical to you, but it is bizarre. You send a person out on the street and you tell them to find another Jew, and if it's a male Jew, have them roll up their sleeves in the middle of the street and put on tefillin. Now tefillin is mad weird. Black box here, strings all over the place. Are you crazy? Or if it's a Jewish woman, give her a pair of candlesticks, give her some candles, and inspire her to light candles the next Shabbos. It's bizarre. But here's what has been happening. So you have a 14-year-old little boy, right? What should a 14-year-old boy do on a plane? Watch a movie or sit there and shut up. No. Instead, as soon as the plane hits the right altitude and you're allowed to take off your seatbelt, he gets up and he starts going up and down the row looking for Jewish faces. So what's happening here? There's a plane. Let's just take 250 people sitting on the plane. Everybody has their own agenda. Everybody has their own itinerary. Everybody has things to do. The plane is only one of a few 100,000 planes that are taking off. It's part of a vast mechanism, a schedule, and so on and so forth. But this boy knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that the whole airport and the whole airport controller and all the people sitting on this plane and all the business meetings they're going to and all the relatives are going to is for one purpose. There is a Jew on this plane and he has to put tefillin on him. That's an audacious statement. The plane lifted off and the plane will land, and all these people got on this plane because one Jew has to put on tefillin, or two, or three, or five. But there's more. The Rebbe created a reality where, look, under normal circumstances, for a Jew to put on tefillin, what should you have to do? You should have to nurture a relationship with them, nourish their openness to Judaism, speak to them about what tefillin are. This should all take a few months. Explain to them the importance of this mitzvah, and then maybe they'll be ready to put on tefillin. Instead, this young pisher comes over to you and asks you if you're Jewish and tells you that he would love for you to put on tefillin. And what happens is basically, and not everybody, I'm not oblivious to the fact that there are a lot of Jews who don't want to put on tefillin in public, although it's interesting to hear how many people will tell you that they said no, they said no, they said no, they said no, but in their mind they said to themselves, but if somebody's going to ask me 78 times or 120 times or 52 times, I'm going to do it. And guess what? They were asked that 52nd time. So what the Rebbe did was say to a Jew, really, it doesn't matter if you understand or you don't understand. The reality is that you have a left arm and you have a forehead. And that's where the tefillin belongs. End of discussion. And it's amazing to see how this has become something expected. Or this incredible story. So my mother, for many, many years, took care and still continues to take care of the Lubavitch Women's candlelighting campaign. So I actually saw the story go down in front of my eyes. So I'm not giving you a yarn, but also we're right near Grand Army Plaza. It's a fantastic library. You can go and find the microfiche for yourself. So January 1st, 2000 was a Friday. It was a very big deal. Everybody in this country thought that our life is coming to an end. The stock exchange is going to come to a grinding halt. There's not going to be water. There's not going to be electricity because none of the computers know how to make the transition from 19 to the year 2000, right? Okay, hysteria. Everybody's stocking up on water, batteries, and so on and so forth. The New York Times is busy putting out a very special edition for this occasion. Actually, they put out 3 front covers. One from 1990 to show how far the world had come in 100 years. One for January 1st, 2100. That one was all digital, and it had stories about how robots are going to be voting and how Cuba became the 51st state and so on and so forth. And in the lower left-hand corner, there was an advertisement, as there is in every issue of the New York Times. It cost a lot of money to put advertising there on the front page, lower left-hand corner, and it said, Jewish women and girls light Shabbat candles tonight. Press here to find candlelight in your location. Well, Saturday night, that was on a Friday, Saturday night, J.J. Gross, my mother's PR person, calls my mother hysterically and says, Esther, you did that? She doesn't know what he's talking about because she didn't see the New York Times. It was still by my grandmother who gets it, and she didn't get it yet because we used to get it after my grandmother was finished reading it from cover to cover. He says, you didn't see it? Go to your mother's house and call me right back. On the bottom front page, this announcement. My mother says, I don't know who put it in. I didn't do it. You had nothing to do with it? JJ said, I had nothing to do with it. Bottom line is they call the New York Times, listen to this, a Catholic Irish editor put it in because he said, we should have an advertisement there because we always have advertisement on the lower left-hand corner of the front page, and we don't know what's going to be happening in 100 years with certainty. But one thing we know for sure, Jewish women and girls will be lighting candles because there is this Nudnik organization that reminds Jewish women and girls to do this. Now, in fact, for over 7 years, that advertisement had run. But it had not run for a short time before the year 2000 because the person who was backing it lost all of his funds and he could no longer back it. And sadly, there just wasn't the funds to run it. But the New York Times remembered it, and they were sure that this organization would still be on this project and Jewish women and girls would still be lighting Shabbos candles in 100 years. That's the Rebbe impacting a Catholic Irish editor at the New York Times. And finally, this Hasidic rebbe, okay, so usually the term Hasidic comes with parochial and insular and an aversion to anything new, taught us from the start that if there is something God created, if there is something God allowed man to innovate, it is for the purpose of Torah. This is going to sound comical to you, but many years ago, Rabbi Yosef Weinberg started teaching Tanya lessons on the radio. On the radio! There was a tremendous backlash. How dare you teach Torah on an impure medium such as the radio? Everybody follow me? Okay. Then, years later, the Rebbe appeared on cable TV. His Farbrengens were telecast on cable TV. Again, a ruckus. TV? Teaching Torah on a TV? It should come as no surprise to you that Chabad in cyberspace was the very first, not only Jewish organization, but the very first organization on the World Wide Web. Okay? But the Rebbe was teaching us something very, very simple. Everything in this world was created for one purpose.